It all begins. Our protagonist Daichi, a high school student desperate for summer break, but instantly, his excitement is crushed when his teacher hands him his failing grades. The teacher gently asks if his struggle is because of his father's tragic death, but Daichi heartlessly lies, claiming he's just lazy and playing games, while in secret, he actually spends every waking moment obsessively researching the internet for the truth, things that teachers and adults would surely dismiss as meaningless distractions. And after a few hours pass, he heads to a video game arcade where he runs into Kaito, who casually invites him over to his house, so Daichi goes along and is surprised to see two classmates already there, most notably Anna, and after some time they begin playing together while Kaito mentions his plan to go to a summer house and asks if she would like to come. But just then the girls tease Anna about her tutor, and Kaito unexpectedly admits that he is not Daichi's real father because his actual father died some time ago and was an astronaut, and almost immediately Anna switches the TV channel to a news report about an astronaut. Yet the moment Daichi sees the strange phenomenon unfolding in the sky on the screen, he freezes, because it triggers a childhood memory of witnessing something eerily similar, and without explaining much he stands up, thanks Kaito for the invitation, but says he doesn't think he can go, then leaves. And as he walks away, his thoughts drag him back to a day long ago when he wandered near a space facility and saw a child standing on the other side of the gate, staring at him oddly and asking about the object hanging on his chest, and Daichi explained it was a gift from his father, only for the confused boy to ask what a father even was, a question that left him shaken and overwhelmed by emotions he never learned how to process. While elsewhere in the city inside a tall building, two boys say goodbye to a pair of investigators, and once they are alone, their excitement spills out as they say the harvest season has finally begun and that they have already found the person capable of activating the machine, meaning they can now fulfill their destiny like planetary gears falling into place. And at the same time, in another investigation room, two TPI members lie weakly on stretchers as supervisors conclude that the strange singularity in the sky was caused by that very boy, confirming that he is indeed an avatar. And the next day, Daichi travels by boat, lost in memories, because curiosity pushed him to walk past Teepe before and promise him his necklace if Teepe could do something surprising, which the boy accepted by jumping from a dangerously high place without taking any damage at all. But then Daichi surprised him in return by throwing a boomerang, and from that moment a friendship was born, one that lasted for hours as they talked, climbed to a high point, and watched the sunset together, where Teepe showed him his power by forming a rainbow from his palm, leaving Daichi stunned and now pulled back to the present as he arrives at the island's port. He feels an unexpected sense of home and goes straight to his father's grave, where Tsutomu admits he had been waiting because Toshiaki said Daichi would come here and hoped he would return home soon. Yet the question still lingers of whether his father truly died in an accident, sending Daichi's mind back to the day it happened when an object was heading toward Earth and Tao, his father, activated the rocket without hesitation, knowing that as captain his only duty was to protect the planet, believing his sacrifice would be worth it. And Tsutomu confesses that while she regretted the pain of that decision, his father was the greatest captain that ever lived. And a few minutes later, Daichi returns to the facility, remembering that 3 months before the accident was the last time he saw Teepe, when Teepe promised to show him something incredible, and after unlocking a door, they walked through unfamiliar corridors until Daichi entered a room and stood frozen before a small girl sleeping inside a massive sphere, and Teepe admitted she had never woken up. But when Daichi touched the sphere, a blinding light filled the room for seconds, and in that instant the girl opened her eyes, looked straight at him, and asked if it was him, leaving the boys confused as they helped her out and gave her clothes. Yet the moment they stepped outside, they found a group of people already waiting for them, and that was the last time everything felt even remotely normal. He was the last person who saw them, and because of that, our protagonist now returns once again to the facility, feeling uneasy when, without any explanation, the door's lock suddenly opens on its own, so he slowly walks through the corridors, yet ends up getting lost. And then a strange sound echoes nearby and startles him, but in the next moment he sees a girl appear, calmly playing a flute, and with a quiet gesture she signals for him to follow her, and at the same time, far away in a base belonging to Pasil, the Amara are preparing their companion Moko, who is finally ready for her mission, and seconds later she is launched forward using the power of the base, immediately entering her combat form, feeling genuine joy because it has been so long since she last wore her armor and could move freely through space, so she begins heading straight toward Earth, while organizations and satellites quickly detect her presence, triggering defense systems that label her as a threat and order every available protocol to open fire. And meanwhile, our protagonist follows the mysterious girl into a strange elevator, and when they reach a very dark place, he asks why she brought him there, but instead of answering, she points toward the sky where he sees a hologram of Moko in full armor advancing toward Earth, and this deeply worries him because he knows a catastrophe is approaching if she is not stopped, yet he has no idea what he himself can do. And out in space, Moko effortlessly stops every missile launched at her, while back in the darkness, the girl points toward a weapon that suddenly appears in our protagonist's hand, and in the blink of an eye, he finds himself somewhere completely different, standing beside a gigantic suit of armor armor as a man asks him whether he is a captain and if he understands the value of the weapon he holds, leaving him confused. But then he remembers what Titsutomu once told him about his father, and he admits that all he truly knows is that he must stop the danger heading toward the planet. And as he says this, the weapon in his hand begins to glow with intense light, and at that same time the space station erupts in shock because the expansion protocol has activated automatically, something no one expected, not even Titsutomu, who cannot understand what is happening as the Pegasus rocket is launching from Earth when he believed Teepe was still in the infirmary. And our protagonist places the weapon into the core of the power system and focuses deeply, knowing he must guide the rocket toward the expansion station, so he does his best to control it, letting the power inside him lead the way, freeing himself from the capsules and advancing in his armor until he reaches the first station where the expansion protocol begins. And after passing through 3 more stations flawlessly, he obtains the armor with its power at maximum, astonishing everyone on the space station. And even several generals begin questioning how someone could possibly master the Libelaster weapon, since that kind of power could disrupt the balance between factions. And from his post, Titsutomu watches in disbelief as Teepe arrives, becoming even more confused because he still does not know who is controlling that space armor. And moments later, Moko draws closer to Earth and finally confronts our protagonist, immediately opening fire with excitement and overwhelming him with her attacks, while Titsutomu tries to contact the pilot and is stunned when he hears our protagonist's voice. And even Teepe cannot understand why he is the one piloting the Earth Queen, but it is Peter who speaks to a girl no one recognizes and asks for her help, which she agrees to, informing him that she will take over the communication system, greeting our protagonist, who asks who she is, yet she calmly answers that it does not matter and that he only needs to know she is a magical girl on their side, warning him that he is now on a battlefield and his objective is to defeat the machine attacking them. And she also explains that the armor he is using consumes his life energy through the lip blaster, asking whether he has ever piloted one before, which he denies, admitting he is just a high school student, leaving her completely shocked as she realizes the weapon itself chose him. So she says she will take direct control and tells him to hold the weapon firmly so it can draw out his vital energy, allowing him to dodge some of Moko's attacks and land a hit, though Moko proves far more agile and strikes him hard, the full impact crashing into him, while Akari grows frustrated because controlling things from such a distance makes precise decisions difficult. Yet our protagonist grows angry at the thought of dying here, and after remembering his father, he decides to take responsibility himself, concentrating all his life energy into the weapon and charging straight toward his enemy, shocking Moko as she recognizes the energy radiating from his armor, and he chases her down and delivers a blow with all his strength, using that opening to activate one of the weapons and completely destroy her armor, reducing it to a simple cube that returns to the station it came from. And across the space station, everyone erupts in celebration, while Peter apologizes to Titsutomu for acting without permission, explaining that he had no choice because Akari is the only one capable of handling an EA in Guinea, and that he had planned to present her as a candidate to work there anyway. And at that moment, the space general informs them that their fears about the Kilty gang becoming more active were real. So all defensive protocols are now fully engaged, though the most shocking discovery of all is learning where the lip blaster was located. And hours later, our protagonist returns to the island using the armor's automatic landing system, where Titsutomu is already waiting and admits he never expected him to obtain the lip blaster, and soon after begins running tests to ensure his body suffered no alterations, while the lip blaster is taken to storage and placed beside the previous lip blaster. And Teepe and Han are interrogated because the girl never informed them there was a second weapon, yet it is clear they are hiding several secrets of their own, leaving Titsutomu with more questions than answers. For his part, Titsutomu explains to our protagonist that his organization publicly presents itself as an institution dedicated to designing space enhancements, but in reality they are responsible for protecting the world from alien invasions. And upon hearing this, our protagonist immediately suspects that his father did not die in a simple accident. Yet when Titsutomu asks how he obtained that weapon, he can only answer honestly that he does not know, because one moment it was not there and the next it was already in his hand. And a few minutes later, as they walk together, Titsutomu notices the investigators interrogating the boys and storms in angrily, furious because he never authorized the use of those special headphones on them, while our protagonist ignores the argument and happily greets Teepe, realizing how long it has been since he last saw him. And he also assumes that Hannah is the girl they found that day, so he proudly shows his boomerang, remembering perfectly how to use it, and he takes Han by the hand to teach her, but suddenly she falls to the ground because Rado activates a switch that sends pain through the headphones, hurting both kids, shocking our protagonist as he sees the pain Han is suffering. And hours later, Han is already resting in her room, caring for her pet while being monitored by Reito, as Titsutomu speaks with his research team because Peter has begun to believe that the lip blaster is not only an energy generator but also an extra-dimensional life form capable of choosing people and activating the ERT machine in Guinea. While elsewhere in another building, Cube speaks with his assistant, who cannot understand why they give give those kids so much freedom to train and make decisions? Yet the man simply replies that it is policy, because his superiors decide what must be done with those children, and at the same time, Moko explains everything that happened to Mara, who asks her to let her see, then steps closer and kisses her, obtaining her memories and witnessing the armor that struck her, though she is surprised because that armor uses a lip blaster as a booster, something extremely rare, and she warns her not to create illusions because she is just a computer, then asks about their plans, and Moko calmly replies that all simulations are perfect, and that the global organization will gain enough time for them to save humanity, though Cube coldly reminds her that only the humanity he chooses will be saved. And the next day, our protagonist is summoned into a room where he sees on the screen the same man he saw before boarding the armor, as Peter introduces himself as the chief scientist of the base and assumes he already knows the people standing behind him, which our protagonist confirms when he recognizes Han and Teepe, and Reito immediately questions him about where he planned to take Han the previous day, to which he replies that he was simply trying to keep a promise, remembering the day he met Han and promised to teach her how to fuse a boomerang, but now he asks Reito why they felt pain, and the man responds that Han and Teepe are under the organization's supervision, and that as a security measure they use special headphones that send painful shocks if an escape attempt is detected, which angers our protagonist because they have done nothing wrong. Yet Peter interrupts and explains that they need to talk about the lip blaster he used with the armor, since it is extremely unusual for someone to wield it, especially when they believed only one existed, and even Han, the owner of the first weapon, was never able to use it, leaving Teepe as the one who always fired it. So now they have many experiments to conduct and mysteries to uncover because of his appearance, but our protagonist asks what they did with his weapon, and an irritated Reito snaps that the lip blaster he obtained does not belong to him, and so our protagonist tells Han and Teepe that he will wait for them at the beach. And hours later, as Peter speaks with Tsutomu, they both reflect on the unbelievable coincidence that Daiichi's father was the one who named the ERT machine, and now his son seems destined to pilot it. But suddenly, an alarm warns them that our protagonist's headphones are sending intense distress signals because he has reached the beach and, focusing deeply, causes his weapon to appear in his hand and fires at the tower controlling the headphones, disabling them instantly. And in her room, Han is shocked when the pain stops, so she grabs her pet and knocks Reito aside as he tries to stop her, rushing to reunite with our protagonist, who uses his boomerang in a way that leaves Hannah amazed. And Teepe asks why he returned to the island, to which he replies that he had to fulfill the promise he made to both of them. And the next day, Tsutomu visits him and asks him to follow, noticing from his expression that he did not sleep well because of the handcuffs they placed on him. And when they arrive at the main hall, everyone else is already there as Reito announces that headquarters has authorized new security devices to prevent escapes, but Tsutomu finally loses his patience and ends it all by freeing our protagonist and the others on the spot, shocking Reito, as Tsutomu reminds him that he is the commander of this facility and will not allow the children to be treated that way, something he already reported to headquarters, and Reito storms off angrily when he realizes he cannot win. And moments later, Peter enters with Akari, surprising Tsutomu to see his daughter there as Peter introduces her as their new companion, revealing she was the girl who helped during our protagonist's mission and had a code name, though Tsutomu cannot understand why his daughter was chosen until Peter admits she is a prodigy hacker capable of breaking their security, making her indispensable to the project. And Akari confesses she became a hacker because her father was always busy and her mother, as a space station commander, was rarely home. So in the end, Tsutomu accepts, but only on the condition that his daughter, Teepe, Han, and our protagonist all live in his house, because things will no longer be handled the same way. And after clearing everything up, they go buy supplies together, apologizing to the kids for how unfairly they were treated over the years, promising that with our protagonist's arrival, everything finally makes sense and from now on, things will change. And hours later, our protagonist cooks dinner while Tsutomu tells them they will now live together as a family, though with several rules. And after dinner, Han talks with Akari about her pet pits, whom Akari saw at the temple earlier, leading Han to ask about that place. And Akari explains there is a temple dedicated to an angel that fell to earth, while our protagonist speaks with Teepe under the incredible night sky. And Teepe admits he was shocked to see him use that weapon and, as promised, gives him his necklace, because whenever one surprises the other, they must give it up, while Tsutomu is informed by Peter that the Federation has unanimously decided that our protagonist will pilot the armor again. And that night, Reito speaks with one of his superiors, who admits they did not expect our protagonist to summon his weapon and destroy one of the towers, but stresses the importance of Han Kivotos and orders that she must remain captured and controlled, assigning Reito the mission of eliminating our protagonist before he becomes a greater obstacle. And hours later, Moko prepares everything for Amara to destroy that armor, activating the system and sending her ally toward Earth, appearing suddenly as all systems sound the alarm. And Tsutomu is horrified when he recognizes Amara's armor as the same one that fought Daiichi's father and caused his death, something Reito also knows and secretly welcomes as an advantage, while our protagonist sits in a room trying to write the report they requested exhausted about how he obtained his weapon, only to realize everything was too confusing to explain. And at that moment, Reito enters and tells him he came for something important, revealing that a machine has appeared in the sky and is heading toward them, and that it is the same armor that killed his father 9 years ago. And minutes later, as Titsutomu debates what to do, haunted by the destruction that machine once caused, he is told that our protagonist is preparing to deploy the ship without permission, only for Reito to admit he authorized it because he believes he can overcome this trial, while the space station commander is stunned when the activation process begins automatically as the machine armor approaches. And as our protagonist completes the procedure, the commander questions why they sent him when he is not ready for something of this scale, but Reito smugly replies that they still have missiles if he fails, prompting an enraged Titsutomu to strip Reito of his authority and ban him from all command rooms, though Reito leaves smiling, confident this will be the end of the machine. And minutes later, Han is alerted by her pet and runs out in panic as Titsutomu is informed that multiple satellites are down and they cannot support our protagonist, until Akari asks to handle it herself, activating remote systems through German satellites and astonishing everyone as she hacks them effortlessly, brushing off her father's question about last year's space system hack and instead launching support missiles just as a tremor spreads without anyone realizing it is Han channeling her vital energy toward the machine, while at the same time Amara destroys the incoming missiles with ease, declaring that she will not underestimate them again because she recently lost, and the bitterness of that defeat still sits inside her like a sharp stone. And Titsutomu urgently tells our protagonist to return immediately because he is not ready for this kind of fight, yet our protagonist, breathing hard, asks him if it's true that his father once battled this same machine, and the commander confirms it. And in that moment, something hardens inside our protagonist as he answers that then he has to stop it because he refuses to let his father's death mean nothing. And with that thought pushing him forward, he begins firing, but Amara doesn't back away at all and instead rushes in, slamming into him again and again with brutal hits, making Akari panic because it looks like they never fully repaired his armor after the previous damage, and Amara is clearly overpowering him with ease. And just when she is about to land a crushing blow, a light suddenly appears between them, growing brighter until it forms an armor that Amara recognizes instantly as Alvion, and she clearly did not expect to see it here. And before anyone can even react, that armor releases a massive sword, and with one decisive thrust, it pierces the head of Amara's machine, then follows with a heavy slash that turns her armor into a cube that shoots back to the station, leaving Titsutomu stunned because he cannot understand where that armor came from. And in the middle of that shock, Han appears inside the command area and tells them clearly that this armor is an ally, and our protagonist stares in disbelief as the machine that saved him creates a beam of light just like the one Teepe showed him long ago. And minutes later, they rush to the capsule where Teepe lies extremely weak, while Peter cannot understand how they made it work because that system was never efficient. But Han admits she simply sang a little, and Titsutomu remains deeply shaken because what they did didn't just change the battle, it saved our protagonist's life. And hours later, Amara wakes up inside her capsule and tells Moko that Alvion appeared and they fought, but it stood against them, and she insists they must investigate immediately because she hates what just happened. And the next day, our protagonist cannot stop worrying about how Han and Teepe are doing, so Akari tries to lift his mood, while Titsutomu at headquarters speaks with several investigators who analyzed Han, trying to detect the origin of the energy she created to activate the machine. And they also hand him the results of psychological tests they ran on Teepe that morning, and after reading them, Titsutomu gives Peter permission to speak with Teepe, so Peter begins questioning him about that armor, explaining it vanished from a laboratory during the Kanda incident at the exact time Teepe also disappeared, but Teepe refuses to claim he knows anything, saying it simply appeared along with him inside that armor, and Peter isn't surprised and ends the call, then tells Titsutomu his theory. Teepe is the subject who was inside the armor that fought long ago and is still drifting somewhere in space, which leaves the psychologist and Titsutomu confused because it sounds impossible. Yet they also have troubling clues since Teepe has always behaved in a strangely unnatural way, so they decide they must investigate far deeper, and Titsutomu orders everyone that none of this can leak outside this facility because it is top-level secret information, both to protect Teepe and because Teepe saved our protagonist's life, and he also prevented the machine armor from being destroyed. And while all of that is being decided, Teepe quietly activates the light disc in his hand and watches as a strange symbol burns itself into his palm like a mark that refuses to fade. And after a while, Moko and Amara arrive at the island searching for information, traveling in a large vehicle, their presence bringing a new kind of pressure. Who need a facade to put on a show, and our protagonist and Akari just happen to step outside together, walking a short distance until they reach the vehicle where Moko casually gives them something to eat. And although Pitts, Han's pet, refuses to eat much because he clearly misses her, Akari and our protagonist still enjoy the food before heading toward the barracks to ask about their friends. And at that point, Titsutomu explains that Han is currently undergoing examinations while Teepe is being kept in the interrogation room, which our protagonist strongly dislikes because he knows how depressing that place feels. Yet yet Tsutomu allows him to go talk to him. So he goes in immediately, and when he finds Teepe, he simply sits beside him in silence, while Teepe shows him the light disc in his hand and confesses that as a child he was fascinated by what he could do, but once he realized it was not normal at all, he stopped using it because he began to feel something was wrong with him and that things had to change. And hearing this, our protagonist quietly hands him his necklace, explaining that he was surprised to see how it helped him in space, a gesture that deeply moves Teepe. While elsewhere at the entrance, Moko and Amara are stopped by a guard who tells them they are not allowed inside. Yet a man suddenly appears behind him on the security cameras, frightening the guards as Moko mocks how easy it is to fool machines, injecting a virus into the system and gaining access within minutes. And soon after, Akari notices the virus spreading through the system, disabling security and putting everyone on high alert as an explosion erupts from Block C, deeply worrying Tsutomu because it means they are targeting Teepe. So they rush in that direction while a heavy sense of dread grows inside him. And at the same time, Amara greets Teepe directly, while Moko asks him if he is Alvion. And seeing his confusion, Moko wonders if he has not recovered his memories yet, which Amara denies, insisting that since he returned to his armor, he should be fully restored. But just then Tsutomu arrives with a group of soldiers, shocked by the situation, and as the underground facility begins to shake, he orders Moko and Amara to surrender, though they refuse calmly, saying there is no need to waste food because everything will be useful later. And as this tense exchange continues, our protagonist regains consciousness, much to Tsutomu's relief. And when he asks who these intruders are, Amara introduces herself as part of the Amarok, while Moko explains she belongs to the Malkin planetary system, admitting that they see Earth as a source of resources and do not intend to eliminate humans who could be useful later, but warning that if forced to fight, they will not hold back. And after a few moments, Akari manages to unlock the system completely, neutralizing the hack, astonishing Moko because her virus was overcome, and the intruders shield themselves from the security lasers and retreat toward their vehicle as tanks and soldiers surround them. Yet suddenly, everything goes silent until a single shot destroys one of the tank units, and at the same time a mobile armor emerges from the invading vehicle, making Tsutomu stare in fear as it begins crushing military vehicles and tearing through everything in its path, until Teepe shouts for them to stop, saying he knows they are after him and promising that if they do not hurt anyone, he will go with them, which fills Amara with satisfaction because it is the most efficient choice, given that humans have little time left anyway. But in that instant, our protagonist steps in and stops Teepe, refusing to let him leave and abandon them, stunning Teepe because despite being badly injured, he is still standing. And when Amara demands to know what he plans to do, our protagonist focuses his vital energy into his hand, summoning his weapon, frightening Mara because she has never seen power like that, and he fires, destroying one of the armor's arms and shocking Amara, forcing her to warn Moko that they must retreat immediately, fleeing while discussing what just happened, realizing that a lip blaster like that can only mean a Neotanine has appeared in an Earthling, though Amara refuses to believe that Alvion could betray them because it would go against his nature as a kill-to-gang entity. And later, Tsutomu returns to the main facility after assessing the damage, warning everyone that allowing a kill-to-gang armor to enter Earth and move freely would spell total destruction, while researchers report that Akari was responsible for eliminating the virus, further amazing everyone and making them suspect that these four youths are far from ordinary. And days later, our protagonist continues recovering in the medical center as a doctor checks his condition and informs him that Tsutomu has requested to see Teepe, prompting the boy to leave thoughtfully. And although our protagonist spends time with Han, he senses a growing distance between them, something Han also notices as she follows him to the parking area and asks what is wrong. And he asks if she knew that the armor uses orgone energy, which she confirms because her pet told her, though she never considered it an enemy. And hearing this makes him grateful because it helps him understand himself a little better. Yet he warns her that the next time he uses that armor, he may not remain the same as before. And shortly after, Tsutomu meets with Teepe and reveals a special mission, explaining that the Kivotos plan has a target known as AE, a man captured and cryogenically frozen at a space station, shocking Teepe because the man looks exactly like him and even shares his surname, leading Tsutomu to confess that this man provided the genes used to create their avatar, and since the planners could not retrieve him, they may now attempt it themselves, which is why Teepe must go and secure him, even though it is a secret mission, because no one knows the truth about his armor or origin, something Teepe accepts, and hours later they depart Earth aboard a rocket accompanied by Akari, while Tsutomu explains to his assistants that the only way to avoid conflict was to send Akari to the station, since her mother is the commander and her visit would seem natural, though Peter worries it will not be that simple and that sending Teepe where more Kivotos members may be present is extremely dangerous. Yet Tsutomu believes he already has a plan, and sometime later they arrive at the space station where Tsubaki is overjoyed to see his daughter. After so many years, and although Tsubaki is genuinely happy to see her daughter again, Akari feels uncomfortable because she cannot tell her the truth about her mission, and Teepe, for his part, speaks with members members of the crew assistance when they notice another ship in the landing zone, only for the girls to explain that it is just the regular supply ship that arrives all the time. And a few minutes later, Teepe prepares himself for the mission when Akari suddenly arrives and tells him she will go with him because she finds it more interesting, and, more importantly, if he wants to bypass the station's security systems, he will need her help. So together, they head toward the cryogenics zone, where Akari explains that it is a secret plan created by the Ark faction to preserve humanity, since they are convinced Earth will eventually be destroyed, which is why the area is packed with heavy security they must bypass. And while Akari hacks one of the door's alarms suddenly trigger, warning them that there are more intruders in the area, but she confidently assures Teepe that no one can beat her in this system, and they keep moving through the corridors until they reach the room where Ai is kept, and Akari pulls the man's capsule out, leaving Teepe stunned because Ai looks surprisingly young, while Akari grows irritated because the intruders are approaching faster than expected. So she seals emergency exits to block their path and buy time as they begin waking A up. And minutes later, as A slowly opens his eyes, Teepe apologizes for waking him and explains that it is an emergency, asking if he understands him. And after a brief silence, E suddenly smiles upon recognizing Teepe, even though Teepe cannot understand how A knows his name, and I calmly reveals that he was the one who gave him that name, then immediately stands up and begins opening an emergency hatch, knowing the others will arrive soon, surprising both boys with how calm and aware he is of the situation. And moments later, three men enter the room and become angry when they see E's capsule open and realize they were too late, so they chase after them through the hatch. But back in the room, three boys emerge from hidden capsules, having concealed themselves and waited for the distraction to escape unnoticed, with I leading the way while reminding Teepe of the times he confessed that he never knew what it felt like to have a father, until suddenly their name is called out in a corridor, and I quickly realizes they left a guard behind, so he throws out two empty astronaut suits to mislead him. Yet the guard does not realize that I is inside a third suit, which I slams into the wall, while Teepe fires a tranquilizer dart, although the man manages to shoot and hits A, who instinctively shields Teepe without hesitation. And minutes later, after treating A's wound, he tells them that they have likely been located already and must leave immediately, heading outside toward the port to catch a rocket back to Earth, though Teepe hesitates, calling the plan sudden and reckless. But I insists he must follow his father's advice, and soon after they escape the ship using explosives taken from the attacker's backpack, shocking Titsubaki when she is informed of the damage to one of the gates, while Teepe remains deep in thought. And when they reach the port, they see several guards already stationed around the ships. But I continues talking, explaining to Teepe that a father knows how to act, which upsets Teepe as he asks I not to call himself his father, since he grew up without anyone he could call that. Yet I steps forward and hugs him, regretting that he was never able to read him stories or listen to his worries. But Teepe rejects his comfort after so many years, only to be shocked when I suddenly takes away his tranquilizer gun and uses it on him, putting Teepe to sleep, then calmly tells Akari that this is what is best for his son, because those men are actually after Tepe's genetic data, and he refuses to put his son at risk, also admitting that the wound on his arm is far worse than he let on, and that he will distract those men so his son can return safely to Earth, certain that the real reason they sent Teepe was not to bring him back, but simply to let him see his father one last time, something that pains Akari because she cannot return with him, since she is still considered a criminal, so Ei asks her to take good care of his son. While elsewhere, Titsutomu informs his colleagues that Ei's past crimes were committed to protect his child, because he refused to let them use Teepe as an experiment, which eventually led to his imprisonment and cryogenic sleep. And meanwhile, Akari is informed by her mother about the mission and admits she does not care about the real reason they came, because what truly mattered was that Teepe got to see his father, and Teepe himself is surprised by the gentle way the commander looks at her companion, until Akari tells him that I looked at him the same way. And in the end, when they return to Earth, Teepe apologizes to Titsutomu for failing the mission, but the commander reassures him that everything turned out fine because I managed to escape and his whereabouts are now unknown, at least ensuring he was not taken by those men. And Teepe understands that what truly mattered was that he was able to see his father. And days later, as Moko and Amara talk, they notice President Cube arrive, greeting them and explaining he came because he knew they were already testing the Goodfellows machine, while the two girls say they are happy to help the Matchbag Company, and Cube replies warmly that they are important to him, not as test pilots but as his children, staying to talk longer before leaving satisfied for having met them during that incident, while Titsutomu later speaks with his colleagues about going out to dinner together until he receives a call from Titsubaki asking about Ei's disappearance, warning him she knows he is involved and promising to keep it secret because she owes him a favor, only for Peter to notice that the call was hacked and display Akari's screen, scolding her for hacking company calls now that she works with them, and warning her that the Kivotos plan is highly confidential and that revealing too much would cause serious trouble. And minutes later, Titsubaki returns to the control room where she is informed that the armor has not moved since the battle, leaving everyone confused, but she orders them to simply monitor it, as instructed by Gobel, while our protagonist continues training inside a capsule, astonishing Peter with how quickly he is improving for a first-timer. And our protagonist admits that he has always loved video games and wants to keep practicing a bit longer, until he is told that Han has arrived, worried about him. And in the end, our protagonist decides to stop and leave, to go talk with her friend. And while that happens, Cube speaks privately with Pook, the most powerful and famous being on the planet, calmly confirming his plan, explaining that once all members of the Kivoto plan leave Earth, the Kiltagon will arrive and wipe out every remaining human. And after that, they will abandon the solar system altogether, because those machines need constant energy to function and will keep searching for more people elsewhere. But in Pook's case, he will be able to return to this planet and finally build the utopia he always dreamed of, choosing only the people he wants and ruling the entire world as its absolute leader. While elsewhere, Titsutomu visits the grave of our protagonist's father, and as memories flood back, Toshiaki suddenly appears demanding to know where our protagonist is, unaware that at that very moment, the boy is taking a walk with Han, asking her if she still remembers the first day they met, when she stared at him and asked if it was him, even though he never understood what she meant, and Han quietly explains that she had already been in this world before but does not truly belong to it, because she was created as a tool to activate the lip blaster, yet she could never do it. And in that darkness, where everyone only wanted her to awaken the weapon, she thought she saw a light, something that changed everything for her, and she clung to that hope, ending up on this planet and sinking even deeper into the darkness. So our protagonist asks if the planetary gears were the ones who created her. And meanwhile, Teepe explains to Akari that planetary gears are made from a material called ego block, which are crystallized and digitized souls that make them immortal, and that is why they believe they are the only true beings in the universe. And Han then admits to our protagonist that she is not a planetary gear because she is not immortal. She was only created as a tool, but our protagonist steps closer and tells her that to him, she is not a tool at all, but a person, just like Teepe is. And elsewhere, Akari asks Teepe how he now views humanity after regaining Albion's memories, since Albion was one of the strongest gears, and Teepe admits it is hard to explain because he does not know whether immortality is a blessing of long life or an eternal prison. And later, Cube speaks with his secretary, who comments that he spends too much time alone in that computer room, but Cube replies that it is a place for meditation, knowing in his mind that no one else can enter to speak with Pook because the room is protected by biometric security. Yet at that very moment, Amara and Moko manage to sneak inside and speak with Pook, who greets them and admits that Cube still has not realized their true intentions because he is too naive to blindly believe in them, prompting the two to praise him as a very useful mind and ask him to continue with the plan. And Pook then sends a message to Reito assigning him the mission to capture Han, explaining the method he must use because the Kaivotos plan must succeed no matter the cost. And a few hours later, our protagonist arrives at the barracks and sees his uncle together with Titsutomu, so he says goodbye to Han and asks the commander for permission to speak alone with his uncle, which Titsutomu allows. And Toshiaki explains that based on his grades, he thought it would be good for him to take a vacation for a while, but he cannot stay on the island because his parents entrusted him with his care. And our protagonist replies that he hates city life because it feels like a prison to him. And meanwhile, at the dock, Reito suddenly appears pointing a gun at Han, and seconds later, Pook approaches our protagonist and bites him, forcing him to follow, which our protagonist immediately understands because Han is in danger, so he runs and finds Reito on a yacht holding her captive. And even Toshiaki panics when he hears gunshots, but our protagonist tells his uncle not to interfere, summoning his weapon and pointing it at Reito, who mocks him and dares him to shoot, knowing he would never kill anyone. And instead, our protagonist throws his boomerang, which Reito dodges. But as our protagonist shouts Han's name, she moves just enough for the boomerang to return and slam into Reito, knocking him into the sea. And in that moment, our protagonist tells Han to jump, which she does without hesitation, colliding with him hard, yet he does not care because her safety matters more than anything. And afterward, Toshiaki speaks with Titsutomu, confessing he witnessed something he never thought possible, but reassuring him that he will not say a word, though our protagonist's words shocked him because they reminded him deeply of his brother, making him believe that the same legacy has been inherited and cannot be avoided. And later, Titsutomu speaks with Peter and his assistant, explaining that the Arc faction has become more extreme and likely wants to activate the Kivoto project immediately, while the Interception faction argues for a direct attack against the Kiltagan. And when the girl asks why they cannot use both plans, Titsutomu teaches them a hard truth, revealing that on the far side of the moon, there are remnants of an impact left by one of the Kiltagan far from their bases, and if those machines reach Earth, the planet would end up the same, so he cannot accept the Kivoto plan because it would mean the extermination of humanity. Yet at the same time, they do not have the strength to defeat the Kiltagan either, especially since they still do not understand how our protagonist managed to avoid being drained by the power of those machines, leaving the commander deeply frustrated as he finds no solution and silently asks our protagonist's father to help him save the planet because he can no longer see a way forward. And with that, this anime comes to the end.